The Flower Shop. Chapter 14. Voyeur. Read by Paige Lindsay. "Now, are we all ready?" Alexei shouted, his hand hovering over the portkey. "Yes, coach," the team shouted. Alexei tightened his grip on Hermione's shoulder as he touched the portkey. They all stumbled as they landed. Hermione was on the opposite side of the circle when they travelled, and the first thing Viktor did once they landed was search for her. She had her satchel on as per usual, and Alexei was smoothing her hair down, asking her if she was okay, to which she nodded. Viktor reached her in a few seconds and pulled her into his arms. She had never travelled through a portkey with so many people before, and he feared for her, not being able to hold her on the way through. "Are you all right?" he whispered gruffly into her ear, and she giggled, lapping up the attention he was giving her. "Yes, I'm quite all right. I have travelled via portkey before, you know." She looked up at him with large eyes, smiling up at him widely. He placed a soft, tender kiss onto her forehead and pulled her back into an embrace. "I know, but I worry," he whispered into her ear. She wondered how he coped during the war, when her life was in danger every day. But then he didn't know she cared for him, and neither did she. She placed a hand on his face and looked into his eyes. "Viktor, everyone is staring," she whispered, feeling the stares bore into her of not only the Vultures, but the attendants of the match waiting to get a glimpse of the Bulgarians. He released her reluctantly and travelled back over to Alexei, who was bringing the team to order. Once the team was set up in their tent, Alexei led Hermione to her space, where she could set up her tent. "Now," he began in Bulgarian, "here is where you pitch your tent. Can you do it yourself?" he asked. She nodded her head enthusiastically. "Oh, and Miss Granger," he interrupted her as she began unpacking her things from her bag. "If you could speak in Bulgarian with the team, including Viktor, I would be very grateful." She nodded, not feeling like talking in this moment, and he left her in peace to put up her tent. She sighed once the final pole was in the ground solidly. The Vultures had given her a fantastic tent, fitted with cots and shelves for her potions, a small makeshift desk, and a lounging area. She thought back to the Weasleys' tent when Hermione had first watched Viktor play in the World Cup. So much had happened since then, and yet here they were, as if everything had come full circle. Viktor found her tent quickly and entered, not knowing how to signal his presence with the absence of a door. She was bent over her shelf, trying to find a potion he suspected. He had to avert his gaze, her skirt rising dangerously high up her thighs. "Hermione?" Viktor called to her and watched as her reddened face turned to look at him. "How long have you been stood there, Viktor?" she asked in perfect Bulgarian, despite being flustered. "Long enough," he smirked at her, and a hand flew over her mouth, her eyes falling to the ground in shame. She had felt self-conscious that morning, aware that her skirt showed off some of her curves she had gained after the comfort eating that followed the war. "You cannot know how happy it makes me to see you in my colours, to hear you speaking my language," he sashayed over to her with all the confidence in the world. She had held the upper hand with his fractured English, but now they were speaking his mother tongue, and with that came a surge of power that excited him. He pulled her into him, wrapping his arms around the small of her back. She smiled up at him, knowing how happy it made him to see her in Burgundy. "I feel like I belong, truly, for the first time in a long time," she purred to him, laying her head against his chest. "You will always belong when you are with me," he cooed to her, and she wrapped her arms around his neck, placing a feather-like kiss to his throat. Ron stood outside Hermione's tent, veiled in the invisibility cloak. He loved her, and he knew that what he had done with Lavender was wrong, but she had been so prudent, so cold to his touch that no man could have blamed him for doing what he did. He was sure. He was going to beg for her forgiveness. She had denied Harry's second-hand requests, and he had been sure to receive the world's worst howler if he had sent one to her himself. So he thought to do it in person would be the best, but to save her reputation from the Daily Prophet, he had donned the invisibility cloak to enter her tent. He had expected to find her alone, fiddling with a potion or reading a book. However, he was stopped in his tracks when he saw her in the arms of Viktor Krum. Ron knew he should walk away and come back when she was alone, but he could not help himself. Krum kissed her neck and whispered to her in a language Ron didn't understand. His eyes widened in shock when he heard Hermione reply in the foreign tongue. Although he couldn't understand the words, the intimacy held in them was obvious even to a layman. Ron sighed, seeing them together, and then hearing Hermione laugh in shock as Viktor pulled her even closer and covered her face and hair with kisses. He saw her smile wider than she had ever smiled with him in their time together, and she accepted Krum's kisses freely, returning them in abundance. He felt a tear trickle down his cheek at the realisation that Hermione Granger had once again fallen for Viktor Krum. Hermione felt a strange presence in the room as she stood in Victor's arms, but shook it off, not wanting to waste this moment. "Victor," she began, "you know when I go to talk to Harry, there is a chance that the Daily Prophet might see me and spin a story out of it." His lips pouted, worrying about the chance of this happening. "I want you to know that I am yours. I wear your colours. I speak your tongue. It is you I think of kissing. It is in your arms I wish to be. Do not let their lies convince you otherwise." She looked up at him with the clearest, purest, most honest eyes that Victor had ever seen. "Before you, I did not think of love or relationships, but you are my every need, my every want. You fill my every waking thought and dance in my dreams. No little paper will change the way I feel." He looked into her eyes deeply, conveying emotions that even the most beautiful words could not. "They think I'm still a slobbermouth anyway, so you'll do better out of it than I," he jested, which gained him a melodic laugh from Hermione. He teased her by placing slobbery kisses to her neck and cheek, to which she cried out in joy and soft protest. She peppered his face and neck with kisses where she could, and soon Victor stopped his onslaught and pulled her face to his, leaving a long, passionate kiss upon her lips. And with that, Hermione felt the strange presence leave and sunk deeper in the kiss, feeling herself let go.